Okay, so you know that feeling, right? You're at work, head down, just
Mhm.
trying to get things done, and suddenly, bam, a big organizational change comes out of nowhere.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like the rug's been pulled out from under you.
Exactly. New systems, processes, maybe even new coffee mugs. Like, who needs a new mug in the middle of all that?
Right. It's the worst. But that feeling of being overwhelmed, that sense of uncertainty, that's what we're diving into today, this whole world of organizational transformation.
We're trying to make sense of it all using some practical tools and frameworks.
And we've got a great source for this deep dive, a business school course document called, get this, Unit 3 Transformation Tools.pdf.
Now, I know what you're thinking, academic papers, ugh, boring. But trust me on this. This one's got some seriously useful stuff, actionable insights, real-world strategies.
Whether you're the one leading the change or just trying to ride the wave without getting swept away, there's something in here for you.
And it really gets into the nitty-gritty of making change actually work. Not just the theory, but the how-to, which is so often missing.
Totally. And one of the first things this document hits on is this idea of a change agreement matrix.
The what now?
Yeah, it's basically a way to figure out how much people actually agree on the need for change because, let's be real, if no one's on board, if they don't get why it's happening,
It's going to be a train wreck.
pretty much. This matrix helps you figure out, okay, what's the best way to approach this change based on how much agreement there is? Like, if people are resistant, maybe those power tools, mandates and stuff might
Oh,
backfire.
for sure. You come in swinging too hard, people get a dig in their heels.
Exactly. But if you focus on leadership tools first, building a vision, communicating
You
clearly,
can bring people along, get
yeah,
them to see the why.
yep. It's like you don't just start rearranging the furniture in a room full of people without, like, checking if they're cool with it first.
Exactly. You've got to read the room.
Right. I saw this happen once. This company I worked with was trying to roll out this whole new software system, radical change.
Mhm.
And they just kind of threw it at everyone. No explanation, no, here's why this is good. Just use this now.
Recipe for disaster.
Total disaster. People were confused, frustrated. A lot of them just kept using the old way in secret.
So what happened?
They had to backtrack, spend even more time and money trying to fix the mess. They totally skipped the whole getting people on board part.
Oof, that's a tough lesson. So before you even think about the what of the change, you've got to nail the why.
100%.
Hmm.
People need to understand why this change is important, how it benefits them.
Otherwise, they're going to resist it.
Guaranteed. On the flip side, I worked with this other company. They were dealing with a huge market shift, knew they had to adapt.
That could be scary.
Totally. But they used this change agreement matrix, realized they were in a low agreement situation, and they really focused on communication involved employees in problem solving.
So they made it a collaborative process.
Exactly. And even though the changes were big, the transition was way smoother, people felt heard, they understood the why.
Okay, so this matrix, it's like a diagnostic tool. Helps you figure out where you are, where your people are, but how do you actually put it into action?
That's where things get really interesting. This document, it highlights this study, companies from Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, all about transforming successfully.
And what's their secret sauce?
They emphasize this idea of turning opposites into complements.
Okay, now you've got to explain that one. What does that even mean?
Think of it like this. To make change really stick, you've got to balance those seemingly contradictory ideas.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example. What kind of opposites are we talking about?
Well, the study lays out these 7 management practices, all about finding that sweet spot between two opposing forces. And the first one is a great example. It's think customer first, be a T with analytical rigor.
So not just following your gut on what customers want, but
Yeah.
actually backing it up with data.
Exactly. Really understanding your customer needs, but also making sure you're using data to make smart decisions. Like, don't just rely on intuition. Back it up with some solid analysis.
Data-driven gut instincts. I like it. What's next on the list?
Okay, so the second practice is reinvent the core A&D, explore the edges.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket, but don't forget about the basket you already have.
Exactly. You need to balance, right? Keep innovating, keep adapting, but don't lose sight of what's already working. What made you successful in the first place? This reminds me of this tech company. They were so busy chasing every new trend.
Oh, I've been there. Shiny object syndrome. What happened?
They totally took their eye off the ball. They were so focused on exploring the edges, they forgot to keep reinventing their core offering, the thing that made them successful in the first place.
It's easy to get distracted by the next big thing. So how do you find that balance? Stay true to your core while still innovating.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something companies have to constantly figure out. But this next practice, it kind of builds on that idea. It's drive for speed and D, build for scale.
So being agile is important, but you also need to be able to scale those changes effectively.
You got it. You can't just move fast and break things. It's got to be sustainable. It's like if you're launching a new product or initiative, yeah, you want to get it out there quickly, but you also have to have a plan for how it's going to grow, how it's going to work long term.
Makes sense. Speed without a solid foundation is, well, it's a recipe for chaos.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next practice. Build a coalition of new and existing leaders.
Why is that mix so crucial?
Hmm.
Why not just bring in a whole new leadership team?
Because you need that balance of fresh perspectives with institutional knowledge. You want those new leaders with new ideas, but you also need those experienced leaders who understand the company culture, the history.
So it's about bridging that gap, honoring the past while embracing the future.
Right. And the next practice is kind of similar. It's about finding that balance between centralized control and giving teams the autonomy to do their thing. It's called empower decentralized units to act independently. A&D, build a strong central TMO.
Whoa, that sounds almost impossible.
Uh-huh.
How do you give teams freedom and independence without creating a free-for-all?
It's definitely a balancing act. You want teams to be empowered to make decisions, be agile, but you also need that central team to provide guidance, ensure everyone's on the same page.
So it's about setting clear expectations, boundaries, but then trusting teams to do what they do best.
Exactly. It's about empowering people, not micromanaging them. And this next practice is all about bringing everyone along on the journey. It's engage all stakeholder groups throughout the transformation journey.
Okay, that one seems pretty straightforward. Communication's key.
Yes. But it's more than just keeping people in the loop. It's about actively involving them in the process, getting their input, addressing their concerns.
Making them feel like they're part of the solution, not just the problem.
Exactly. And that leads us to the final practice, which is all about kind of holding the course amidst all the change. It's stay flexible in your transformation strategy and be firm in your routines.
Okay, now that one sounds like a real head scratcher. How can you be both flexible and firm at the same time?
It's about finding that balance, right? Like you have to be willing to adapt, adjust your plans as needed because things change. That's just the nature of transformation.
Especially in today's world, things are changing faster than ever.
Exactly. But at the same time, you need to provide some consistency, some stability for your employees, especially during a time of big change. Think of it like you're on a ship. You need to be able to adjust your course based on the weather, right? But you also have a destination in mind, a North Star that keeps you grounded.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these seemingly opposite ideas can actually work together. So all of these practices, they all kind of point back to this idea of agile management, right? Being flexible, responsive, embracing change.
100%. Agile management, it's not just a buzzword. It's about creating a culture, a mindset that can handle whatever comes your way.
And it's something that a lot of organizations are trying to figure out right now, how to become more agile in the face of all this change. But with all these tools and frameworks, it can still feel overwhelming. Like, where do you even begin to apply this to your own work life?
Yeah, it can definitely feel like drinking from a fire hose. That's why I like the next part of this document. It goes into some more specific frameworks that can help you take these big ideas and actually apply them to your own situation.
Okay, like what? Give me a sneak peek.
Well, one that I found really interesting is the stakeholder power analysis.
Sounds a little intimidating. What's that all about?
It's basically a way to figure out who has the most influence within your organization, how that might impact your change efforts, like other potential roadblocks. Are there champions who can really help you drive things forward?
So it's about mapping out the playing field, figuring out who you need to win over.
Exactly. And then you can tailor your approach accordingly. Another framework that's super helpful is the change team design framework.
Why is that one so important?
Because not everyone needs to be involved in every decision. That's a recipe for chaos. This framework helps you structure your change team effectively, makes it clear who's responsible for what, who has decision-making authority.
So it's about creating clear roles and responsibilities so everyone knows what's expected of them.
Exactly. And then to keep everything on track, there are tools like change dashboards and milestone charts.
Ah, the beloved Gantt chart. Keeping everyone on schedule, making sure things don't fall through the cracks.
Exactly. These tools are all about visualizing progress, keeping momentum going. But there's one more framework I want to touch on because I think it's often overlooked, and that's the competing values framework.
Ooh, now that one sounds juicy. What's that all about?
This one's all about understanding your organization's culture, which can make or break a transformation.
Oh, absolutely. Culture can be a huge roadblock to change if it's not aligned. So this framework helps you analyze that.
Exactly. It helps you figure out, okay, what are the dominant values, the behaviors in this organization, and are those values aligned with the change we're trying to make?
So, like, if a company has always valued stability, tradition, and now you're asking them to be more agile, more innovative, that could create some friction.
Exactly. The competing values framework helps you anticipate those potential clashes, figure out how to bridge that gap between the current culture and where you want to be.
Okay, this is a lot to process, but one thing's for sure. This isn't just about having a plan. It's about understanding people, choosing the right tools, and being adaptable along the way.
You got it. It's about being strategic, being adaptable, and remembering that every organization, every change is different.
So what's the key takeaway for our listeners who are probably thinking, okay, this is all great, but what do I do with this information?
hmm
So for our listeners who are probably thinking, okay, this is all great, but what do I do with this information?
Well, the biggest takeaway is that successful transformation is about more than just having a plan. It's about understanding the human side of change, choosing the right tools for the right situation, and being adaptable along the way.
Right, because cookie cutter solutions rarely work when it comes to something as complex as organizational change. Each company, each team has its own unique dynamics.
Exactly. And that's where these frameworks come in handy. They provide a starting point for analyzing your specific context, understanding your stakeholders, and tailoring your approach accordingly. It's like having a toolkit equipped with all the right tools, but you need to know which ones to use and when.
It's about being strategic and adaptable, not rigid.
Absolutely. And remember, transformation is rarely a linear process. There will be bumps in the road, unexpected challenges, and probably a few moments where you question why you signed up for this in the first place.
Been there. But, like any good adventure, it's about the journey, right? Embracing the uncertainty and learning as you go.
Exactly. Embrace the messiness, be open to learning and adapting along the way, and celebrate those small wins because they eventually add up to big change.
Words to live by. So for our listeners who want to dive even deeper into these transformation tools and frameworks, we highly recommend checking out the source material for this episode, Unit 3 TransformationTools.pdf. You'll find all the details, diagrams, and insights we didn't have time to cover.
And remember, transformation is an ongoing process, not a destination.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of organizational change. We hope you found it insightful, engaging, and maybe even a little bit transformative for your own work life. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep leading change with confidence.